Today is March 9th, 2017. Let the record show that all board members are present, as well as Town Manager Michael Units, as well as the school committee and Superintendent Joe Byetta. If we could all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I'd just like to take a couple of moments and just make a comment about a tremendous loss to our community. Mr. Lee Tarantino had passed away this week. So certainly he was a valuable member of the community and to his family and friends as well. So a couple of things just about him. He proudly served his country as a member of the United States Coast Guard during the Vietnam War with an honorable discharge in 1970. He lived in Norton the last 28 years, served on numerous different committees, the Finance Committee, the Commercial Development Committee. I was on with the Norton Town Charter when we redid that with him, and the Friends of Norton Senior Center. He was also an active member in Scouting with Troop 12. So, certainly I would like to give my deepest sympathy to him and to his family and friends, and offer a moment of silence for him as well right now. Thank you. Okay. If we could just quickly do announcements, Mr. Sauer.
Mr. Chairman, right now I'm prepared for that. Sorry. We have Norton Energy Fund. Norton Energy Fund was established in 2011. The purpose of this fund was to respond to urgent community need, heat, and utility assistance for Norton residents. The fund will assist in a one-time annual allocation for community residents who are unable to meet their rising heat fuel costs. We help over 30 families, and that's Norton Energy Fund, P.O. Box 552, Norton, Mass. Please include this form, which will be available. Checks will be made to the Norton Energy Fund. Donations over $250 will be a letter for tax purposes, so you can try to keep your neighbors warm. We have a rabies clinic. Will be held at the Norton Fire Department Saturday, April 1st, 2017 at 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. $13 per animal. Dogs should be on leashes, cats and carriers. Dog licenses, town clerk's office will also be open to process dog licenses during the clinic. Altered dogs 16, unaltered dogs 21. The Xfinity Center is interested in joining the Xfinity Center team. We are hiring for ticket takers, ushers, security, guest services, maintenance, cleaning, parking, brand ambassadors, and food and beverage positions. Attend our job fair Tuesday, April 5th, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 6th, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. Saturday, April 9th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That'll be at the Xfinity Center, Backstage Catering, 885 South Main Street, Mansfield, Mass. If you can't make it, email Xfinity Center, AMP_seasonaljobs@livenation.com, and job applications and instructions will be sent to you. Thank you.
Ms. Steele.
Nothing, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Bramwell.
All set.
Mr. Kimball.
All set.
Okay, and I am also all set. We do have a 7:05 hearing this evening, a petition on behalf of Verizon New England to place one new jointly owned pole on Hill Street. Pole installation is necessary in order to allow for removal of a guy wire that is currently attached to a tree. Mr. Selvey, if you could please read the announcement as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was dated February 22nd, 2017. By this letter, you're being notified of a public hearing to be held March 9th, 2017, 7:05 p.m. in the Norton Selectmen's Meeting Room, Norton Municipal Center, 70 East Main Street, Norton, Mass. Relative to the petition, on behalf of the Verizon New England Incorporated and Massachusetts Electric Company to place our newly jointed owned pole number 12925 on Hill Street, Norton, Mass. Per petition and plan enclosed. The pole installation is necessary in order to allow for removal of a guy wire and its current attached to the tree.
Good evening, sir. If you could just let us know your name and company.
My name is Chuck Dunn, and I'm here representing Verizon and Massachusetts Electric Company.
Okay. And if you could please just explain what we're looking at here, I guess, what we're looking to do.
We want to place a pole next to the tree that has the aerial guy in it. And when we place a new pole, we'll be able to remove the guy from the tree and place one from pole to pole.
Okay. So instead of going from the tree, it's going to the pole.
Yes, sir.
Pretty basic. Any questions at all, Mr. Kimball?
Still one favor on that, go back as far into that 10-foot buffer as you can, because that is an S-curve through there. And that tree, I'm surprised the tree's still there, but the pole's probably more than likely gonna get hit. So the way that people are driving through there, so feel free to go back to the edge of the 10-foot buffer, just to make sure we have plenty of clearance from that
Yes, sir.
road, okay?
Any other questions from the board? Any questions or concerns from anybody in the audience? Okay. Given none, I would entertain a motion then to approve the petition on behalf of Verizon New England to place one new jointly owned pole number 12925 on Hill Street, Norton, Massachusetts. The pole installation is necessary to order, well, I don't need to read that. Use that as a motion.
So moved. Second.
The motion and a second. Any further discussion? Given none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Vote aye, that is unanimous.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, if we could, Mr. Savaz, if you could please open your meeting, I guess?
Absolutely. I'd like to formally open our meeting, and I'd like to thank you all for having us here tonight.
Okay. So right now, we have a joint meeting with the Norton School Committee. Again, Superintendent of Schools, Joseph Baeta is here, and if you could just go through your presentation of your budget, I guess.
Sure, so,
Thank you. Oh, Mr.
so
Hughes?
do the
Yes.
EPP first. So we were asked, well, first of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and we were asked last year to take a look at the structure of our district in relation to the Yell Elementary School being considered to either turn it over to the town and/or partially turn it over to the town for the purposes of a town hall, to look at a town hall and/or even senior center was discussed at the time. That I believe it was Mr. Bramwell at the time who came to the school committee. So the school committee requested that I put a working group together to do so. And so what we did is we took about 7 months from beginning to end to look at what we call an educational program plan, which is really a structure of how we do business as a district. At the end of the day, it comes down to how do you move 384 students from the Yale school somewhere else, or even portions of those students somewhere else in order to be able to do that. And as you know from the recommendation that you've received a couple weeks ago, the committee has voted from their subcommittee that at this time, they're not recommending that the Yale school be given to the town for the purposes of something else, either split. And it really comes down to, although, as many of you know, we've had some declining enrollment, it's still the idea of how do you move 384 students into the LGN and the JCS, because there was no real consideration about moving to the middle school. To be quite honest, the reason for that was the middle school is a pod-developed school. As you remember from the building of it, it's a true middle school concept. And so we just don't have the space at this time to just move a fifth grade and change the philosophy of the school, which is a significant change in terms of K-12 education. When it comes to the JCS and the LGN, even with our READS program, as you know, that we have with the deaf and hard of hearing that share some of the space and are also integrated, even if we close those and we move them out and said, I'm sorry, you can't be here, we still don't have enough space for a couple different reasons. Number one is what do we do with the specialty areas of art, music, and then the other areas of OT, PT, or the specialized areas of special education. And probably the thing that you actually see a positive of in our FY18 budget, which is those years, especially in the last 4 years, started with really Chris Martis, and I've continued it as well, and Pat Ansey, to be quite honest, before me as well. We've tried to move away from having students go out of district and develop our own district programs. So we're up to 11 different classrooms within the district right now that weren't here 5 years ago. And the savings is pretty significant, as you know. The idea of a tuition to out-of-district plus the transportation can run us anywhere from $60,000 to as high as $350,000. In those very high-end specialized areas, we don't have those districts, those programs in town. But for us, the idea that a special education student who has certain needs can stay in the community is not only educationally benefit because we're teaching them, but also financially benefit to the taxpayer because it costs less to educate them. And so that takes up space. It's that simple. So you may have a regular classroom that's built for the purposes of 900 square feet being used for 4 students. And you might say to yourself, why do you need all that space? Because of everything that comes with those students. And so we have classrooms that literally have areas that are protected for students for timeouts and so on and so forth. In the old days, it was a very different process than it is today. And we really believe that educating those students here in town, we can do a great job with. And again, there's always students that we have to seriously consider going out of town. We've had as many, when I started here in 2013-14, we had 60 students out of district, 60. We're at 38 right now, and we're projecting a potential decline of 1. Well, I should say I was projecting a decline of 1 until Monday. Now that number's at 38 again because we just had a student move in from a local community. And that's how it happens in the field of special education and students moving in and out. So when you look at it, the numbers don't match up with the space and again, the committee's vote from the subcommittee to the full committee is at this time. That means that the committee is willing to look at this again if in fact we have declining enrollment, which by the way, we're up 18 students since Christmas, which is kind of interesting how that's the dynamics of how that's happening. Your real estate is turning over, and we're seeing some of the young families that are moving into town. So that's both, I guess, a positive, depending on what side of the fence you're on. As you go through it, we try to project out class sizes for you, number of staff that we would be utilizing, and so on and so forth. And we really only looked at a couple of different options, which one, and I'll just go through them quickly. One was to maintain what we have. The other 2 options really was to take the Yale School and make it an early childhood center, so it would be pre-K and K, and then the other 2 schools would be 1 to 5, the LGN and the JCS. And the other area that we looked at was to redistrict completely and have 3 elementary schools, K to 5, very traditional model, and then one of the schools, which would more than likely be the JCS, would be the preschool. Interesting enough, after all of this is done, we have now decided to actually move the project early from the LGN to the JCS for next year, effective immediately, because of the increase in special education students in Project Early. The number of students aging in at grade 3 with special education services is pretty significant. That's both a great thing because we get to educate those students right away, and it's also consuming because you'll see in the FY18 budget, we had no idea back even as early as September and October that we would seriously have to consider adding staff to that program. And I think it's really important for people to recognize that when you look at something like a Project Early, that's a mandated program. That's not the town deciding that it wants to offer universal preschool. That's a whole different discussion. This is children who at age 3 are aging in and have special needs, and the taxpayers and the town education system has a requirement to provide services at no cost. Where we do have a cost, or where we try to offset the cost, is we bring in model students, and we charge the families of the model students upwards of, or up to $2,500 for 3 days a week. So again, the idea behind that is to model with a student who has the disability. That's taking up another classroom space to the point where the LGN, we don't have that classroom. And the reason is I've got a K program of specialized students that I got to split because of the disability. And again, do those students go out of district, or do we split them and use our own space and keep them in town? The cost effectiveness of doing that and the academic effectiveness we feel is positive. So when you look at all of this dynamic, it's just the space isn't there at this time. I don't think the discussion necessarily would have been the same a few years ago because we weren't doing as many specialized programs in town as we're doing now. But again, I think you'll see in my presentation about the budget that that's actually, for the first time in a long time, there's a pretty good benefit to the community and to the school department budget. Instead of an increase, you actually see a decrease in tuitions.
Mr. Kimball?
Yeah, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to go through this presentation. It's, I know how it is to be on a committee, do a lot of work, and find out you can't do anything about it, so that's pretty common these days. But the whole purpose of this exercise, just as a reminder, is us looking at additional space for a town hall. And the need for a new town hall is obvious. If anyone wants to come in and take a look at this one, you can tell that the condition of this place is in pretty bad shape. The original compressor unit, HVAC unit on the roof from 1979. You're standing on the original carpet tonight here in this meeting room since 1979. There's a lot of issues that we have to address in this town hall, including air quality and issues of that sort too. So appreciate the fact that the committee took the time to go through this, but just want to remind everyone that the big hidden factor here is between the town hall and the Council on Aging building, we don't have enough room. And we've been out of room for a long time. So we have to figure out another way to do it. And that was the reason for the whole exercise and looking at this building to see if we could use it or not. So that issue's now has an answer. We have an answer to that. So we have to address the other issue at some point in the very near future. But I do want to thank the committee and appreciate the time you guys took to do that research. Thank you.
So I would agree with what Mr. Kimball said as well, and certainly very good information for myself, as it's not just a black and white type thing where you just, move people to the back and then we get the front type thing. So it's not as easy as it seems, I guess.
Well, I think one of the things that always happens is when you have declining enrollment, at one point we had 3,300 students in this district. We're just under 2,600 now, and with school choice and all that, we get a little over that. But it's really important for folks to recognize that one of the common things we try to do is educate all kids. And when we try to educate all children, that means we're looking at different ways of educating them besides just saying that going to a collaborative or a private setting is the best way. And that's not an easy discussion to have with the general public because it's not something that typically they would know about. But we appreciate the support, and we want to be part of the resolution. And I think the school committee, they're here tonight, they can speak for themselves. We want to be part of the solution, and that's what I said at this time. That doesn't mean we're not willing to look at this down the road again if that's what we need to do in order to try to help as a resolution, if in fact we have enrollment go to a level where we should look at doing so.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Bramwell.
I just wanted to thank you for taking the time, and thank you and your staff for bringing the students back in. From my 12 years on the school committee, I know how special education can be a budget buster and how much less expensive it is to get a student into the classrooms in Norton, where we actually have a control over the rates, where when you go into some of these placements, they aren't restricted by 2.5, and they charge what they want to pay their staff, and you have no control. You pay it, and as you mentioned about a student moving in, I assume, because we're stretching my memory, but if it's a special needs student who moved from a Massachusetts community, I assume they bring their individual educational plan with them.
That's correct.
So even though whatever town, say Mansfield, Easton, whatever, wherever the person left from, whatever that school system had agreed to provide to that student, Norton is legally responsible to take over that contract, per se.
And what's difficult about that is that if you have a student, for example, that moves in March 1st, we might have a cost share for the rest of the year. But on July 1st, you have 100% of that share. So, you're splitting 100,000, maybe there's 30,000 left for the rest of the year. It's 15 apiece, let's say, or we have the 15 or we have 30. But on July 1st, we have 100,000. And that just happened on March 1st, and the budgets have been approved, voted, and we're moving forward. That's the stickler of something like that.
But I just want to
Thank you, appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Kimball.
We mentioned before, what's your percentage of your budget is used for, allocated for special education?
We hover right around 33% when you look at all items for special education. It's a significant amount, and it's a big difference between us and, for example, private school, charter school, and so on. It's a big difference.
Yeah, and that's a floating number, because like I say, you never know what's going to happen. So I think it's important people understand that that's a major portion of the school budget is special education.
Okay. Okay, next, we're going to have a discussion on the fiscal 2018 budget. First, what we'll do is the town manager will present and just discuss the budget. Again, Dr. Byetta will also discuss the school side. This will be, there are quite a few people here, so again, this is not a debate tonight. This is information. So I'm willing to listen to anybody that wants to come up and ask a question or certainly make some comments at all. But I do need to somewhat limit because we could end up with a situation where we're here all night, I guess. But, you know, so like, so let's say 2 to 3 minutes, I guess, per person, I guess, if we could do that. So again, I don't want to get into debates, but so it's a good informational meeting tonight. So if we could, you know, limit some discussion or limit some comments, no debating, and then, you know, I think this can be very effective tonight. Mr. Yunus.
Okay. Thank you. I'm pleased to present to you the recommended fiscal 2018 budget for municipal operations for the town. The level service budget I present to you tonight was developed once again with the assistance of all town department heads and with the continued support and cooperation of the superintendent of schools. It should also be noted that the health insurance change, the modification that we agreed to and the employees agreed to last year is once again making the proposed budget for fiscal year 2018 workable. Health insurance for FY18 will increase 6%. If we hadn't made the change, not only would the increase have been 30%, but it also would have been on a higher cost plan. Unfortunately, I'm not able to provide all departments with the resources they requested to continue level services to the residents. The budget, as proposed, will allow us to continue the services we now have with little margin for error and may require future supplements, particularly for public safety overtime accounts. My goal in the preparation of a balanced FY18 budget was to provide town departments, the school department, and library with an increase of at least 3% in their FY18 budgets, and to have funds available for spring town meeting articles and fall town meeting. The budget draft presented tonight achieves that goal. Some of the parameters that make up the budget: state aid. As is always the case when we begin the process, we're dealing with limited resources and preliminary numbers from the state. The governor's budget has been submitted, and we do not expect to receive the House of Representative budget until sometime in April. State aid continues to be very limited revenue source for the town. The governor's proposal allocates a net increase in Norton's state aid of $113,133. The state, once again, will not meet the commitment that had been made to direct all lottery proceeds to communities. Moreover, Chapter 70 aid is increasing only $20 per student, and I know that the goal was $100 per student. And also, they're not meeting their requirement to fully fund special education services, and that's another burden that has to be met by the town, the cost of special ed. Local revenue, though we continue to work to increase our commercial tax base, as is demonstrated by the 2 very important rezoning articles on the May town meeting warrant, the town's new growth rate each year is minimal. My estimated new growth for FY18 is $395,000. And I have to mention that this is a very aggressive number. Hopefully we'll meet that number. Just in contrast, Mansfield next door, their new growth every year is over $1 million. So we're very limited in what we have as far as new growth to add to the budget. The other major local revenue sources are our 2.5% increment and local receipts. The increment for FY18 is $824,485, and local receipts are estimated to increase $265,000. We will once again review all the fees to assure we are charging fees that are comparable to neighboring towns. I also propose to use $600,000 of free cash to fund the budget. The practice of using free cash for the budget, though necessary, is not a best practice. We would be much better served to limit the use of free cash for funding capital stabilization, and OPEB. We have many capital needs ranging from repairs to our aging buildings to an immediate need for the construction of a new town hall and council on aging facility. If we were able to fund the budget without free cash, these funds would be available to defray the cost of constructing the new facilities and the additional financial burden that will be placed on taxpayers. This year, I also propose to increase the use of ambulance receipts by $100,000. Over the last 2 years, we've begun gradually raising fees for ambulance service to bring Norton's fees in line with neighboring communities. This in turn has increased revenues to a level that allows the increased use of ambulance receipts to fund the budget and has enabled the town to increase staffing levels at the fire department over the last few years. The proposed FY18 school budget is $27,105,655, which amount represents an increase of $993,369. This translates to a 4% increase over the FY17 Norton Public Schools budget. However, it is $70,421 below the school department's requested level service budget, and it does not include full-day kindergarten. The proposed town budget is $11,955,769, which amount represents an increase of $338,359. This translates to a 3% increase over the FY17 budget. The town budget includes the proposed FY18 budget for the Norton Public Library in the amount of $399,111. This translates to an increase of $11,625, or 3%, over the FY17 budget, and it is $17,030 more than the $382,081 that would be minimum funding requirement. The town budget as proposed required a $130,532 reduction in level service requests, and this includes the following major cuts: police overtime, $29,000, fire overtime, $25,000, and I should add that when we're talking about overtime, they're 24/7 operations, so anytime somebody is out sick or on vacation, someone has to be called in to fill that shift, and so that's how the cutback in overtime directly affects how many people we have at the station or out on the street. Also in the budget, the fire department was looking for $48,944 for 2 new hires, which were cut, and ambulance expense was reduced $12,500. So the total reduction is $115,444. The town budget does not include the hiring of any new employees. One of the largest cost increases each year, as I talked about earlier, is health insurance. The FY18 increase is $115,474. We're benefiting this year by one of the smallest increase in our Bristol County retirement system. This is the retirement system for all employees other than teachers, and the FY18 contribution from Norton only increased $6,166. And those that were here with the auditors can remember the auditors talking about the fact that by 2028, we're due to have a fully funded Bristol County pension system. So, and their suggestion was to put that money into OPEB. In closing, the proposed FY18 budget document has been crafted in such a way as to represent the service needs of the entire community and enable all town and school departments to provide level services. I thank all departments for their role in the development of this balanced budget and ask for your approval of the FY18 budget as presented. And I also provided you with the estimated operating revenue and expenditure sheets. And as you can see, in the budget itself, obviously, until we go to town meeting, it's not a done deal. Things could change, but it should be pretty close to what's proposed here. And also, I presented you with a copy of the school budget, and Joe can talk a little bit about the level services school budget.
Sure, so, in general, the school committee has voted a budget increase for this year and a 5-0 vote, but when, in working with Michael for the last few weeks, we're at this point discussing, at this point in this conversation, discussing what the level services total amount was for the school department, which is without full-day kindergarten. So this is to keep what we have, but I want to be clear that this has both areas where we are cutting positions and we're adding positions, and I want to go through that real quickly because it's a new way of presenting some information to you. Our total increase for level services is $1,063,790, not including the full-day kindergarten. But as you look at the page that goes side by side with our budget, you'll see that our contractual obligations at $906,186, we are cutting 2 elementary positions due to class size. And we have 2 retirement announcements at a savings of $60,000. And our materials and supply line item, non-personnel contractual, is set at $301,930. When you add that all up, you have a 4.02% increase to our budget. But where we have 2 areas, one is very good news, the other one is not so good news in terms of what we didn't project. The first one is that our special education tuition, which I spoke to you earlier about the mandates of sending students to tuitioned areas, is that we see right now a 5% increase from both the combination of the collaboratives, public, and the private sections that we send students to of $149,000, but we see an aging out returning students and in-district program savings of $389,278. This is 3 consecutive years of planning and luck. I've said that over and over again, planning and luck. We have students who are aging out, but we've also had 6 students return back into the district over the last year and a half, 1.5 fiscal years. So our net spent tuition is a savings of $239,752. I can assure you in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that there's probably 5 districts and you're one of them. It's unheard of. It is just a situation where really it's lining up perfectly. And again, it's hard work. My staff works very hard to try to develop these programs, and it is luck. I can't say that that doesn't come with it as well in terms of some students that are aging out that we've provided services to potentially since preschool and are aging out at age 22. I also want to remind folks in the audience that we have a responsibility with certain populations of students until the age of 22, not the typical 17, 18, and those come out of our working budget. The curveball in all of this is the mandated positions, which is our Project Early Preschool program. Again, this is not universal preschool discussion. This is mandated preschool for special education children, of which we also then charge what we call model students who are not on an IEP, to kind of be their peers within these programs, which helps to offset some of the cost. But when you take a look at that, we are hiring another teacher, 2 paraprofessionals for the classroom, and with the move of students to a bigger school, we're adding the coordinator / assistant principal. I would argue that these are reinstatements. Your elementary schools used to have elementary assistant principals, and we used to have a early childhood coordinator. We're combining the 2 into 1 because the JCS will have over 500 children next year. And there's no way you can have a building with 1 adult as the principal in a building of that size, and the specificity of Project Early. And that is the constant in and out of students that takes place most of the day with the education of those children. So that has brought in an increase of $169,145. The bus contract I have really no control over. That's $84,451. That's year 2 of a 3-year contract. So that gets you to the $1,063,790. And at this time, Michael Unit, our town manager, has recommended a school budget of $993,369. If you take that from the $1,063,000, the shortfall on the level services only is $70,421. So that's where we're at as of the level services budget for the school department.
Okay. Mr. Units?
do you want us?
All right, actually, any questions from the board on that? Okay. So go ahead, what's your question?
Did you want us to go into the next?
Yeah, so I guess, let me, I don't know if everybody has had a copy of the pages, I guess. I know there's been some floating around. So if need be, we can certainly get you copies, either after the meeting or whenever, I guess. So at this point in time, is there any questions on the discussions that we've had so far, or any comments? Mr. Yunus, then.
Okay. Just on the next section, talking about possible, when I had people in the town the department heads give me their budget for level services, I also asked them to give me a wish list budget, a budget of things they would like to see if the town was able to fund them. And these are the items that obviously we can't fund on a level services budget, so if they were going to be funded, the only way to do it would be through an override. From the FY18 level services that we talked about, between what the town had to cut and the schools had to cut, that was $200,953. The fire department, there's been a lot of requests to see the Chartley station open again for the fire department. And in order to open the Chartley station, the fire department would need to add 4 additional men, combined with their health insurance, uniforms, turnout gear, overtime to cover shifts, and the expense of renovating the building that's been sitting vacant for quite a while, would be $520,896. The police department is looking at hiring 2 new officers. One would be a problem-orientated officer, a new program that they've established that's been very successful and was recognized by the state. And another one would either be a school resource officer or another officer on the street. Between the 2 hires, the training academy for them, and their health insurance would be $108,186. Town hall, part-time HR person. We have no HR person in the town hall, where we need to upgrade all our policies, our job descriptions. We need someone to consult with when it comes to certain HR issues. This would allow us $40,000 to contract out to a company or hire a part-time person. It would be great to have a full-time person, but we have nowhere for them to sit in the building. There's not enough room. The next item is to add more hours to the Council on Aging, increase the hours of the outreach worker that they have, and also to provide some clerical services. The COA, the Council on Aging, also handles all the human services in the town. So people that are fuel assistants, people that are just having homeless people have come to them, people that have serious issues that they need help, guidance on. So it's not just the Council on Aging, it's also our Human Services Department. The next item is to make a part-time clerk in the town clerk's office a full-time clerk. We've been operating that office with a full-time clerk and 2 part-timers, and we really need to add a full-timer and have 1 part-timer, 1 full-timer. This would also help if the situation ever comes up again like it did last year where our town clerk leaves. We're not out there scrambling trying to find someone. There's someone that can step right in and fill the role as the interim town clerk until we hire somebody. The next item is the library is currently open 40 hours a week, and if they were to open 50 hours a week, that would be $100,000. In highway cemetery, we'd look to hire 1 full-time person. That person and their health insurance costs would be $67,343. And then we're also looking to increase the hours of the Recreation Commission.
So, Mr. Yunus, just looking, as I look through the list from the municipal side, I see, fire, police. So obviously, fire looking to open up another station, or reopen the Chartley Station. So obviously, that is a public safety item that we didn't want to see it close. Obviously, would love to see that come back in. The police, obviously, looking for additional staff, which I know, Mr. Kimball, you've stated numerous times that that staff is still the same after a number of years. I find it somewhat interesting that the town doesn't have an HR person. So, I mean, who currently does that right now? Is that yourself?
It would be me, and it would be my assistant, and it would be the treasurer, depending on
So
what
it's
the issue is.
various personnel. And obviously, we know.
And ultimately, it could be our lawyers, so we hate that part.
Right. So I mean, that's a position, I think if we see that and we're all maybe in the workplace that, in a large workplace, that there is an HR person on staff, who is training and knowing the ins and outs of the law. Council on Aging, obviously, we need to assist our seniors. The town clerk, we talk about mandates for the school. There's certainly, that office has changed quite a bit in the last, I'd say, 5 to 10 years. So there's quite a few different mandates that are going on in there as well. The library, the highway, obviously the library, every time I drive by there's 50 cars out there. It's busy. People need the library. People want the library. And it's important, part of the community. Highway, we have a new cemetery land that we purchased, so that increases their workload as well. Obviously their workload is always increasing. I think our roads are very good. Keith does a wonderful job, and I think, I drive through other towns, and they do a really good job, but, it's difficult with the staff that they had, and we're always asking them, or people are always asking them to do more. And recreation, certainly recreation is there for us and our children, so that certainly is an assistance to our kids, I would say, more so than us. Mr. Kimball.
Yeah, I think in addition to all your comments, Mr. Chairman, we have to stress the fact that over the years, we've been reducing town government for a long time. Not so much on the school side maybe, but more so, there's been some reductions there in school staff. But on the town hall side, these reductions have been going away. We haven't been bringing them back. The Chartley Fire Station at one time was open and manned. It hasn't been for years. The Police Department request is to request two additional part-time officers, because eventually the $30,000 is not going to cover their yearly expense. It's to train them halfway for half a year. But the Police Department has not had an increase in personnel since 1991. Town Hall, the HR position is very important, and also, in my opinion, would be well-served to use that not only on the Town Hall side of government, but also on the school side of government as needed. Council on Aging is very important to the seniors. The town clerk, we have reduced that department. We did have a full-time clerk in that department at one time. She retired, and we replaced her with a part-time person. And by the way, the present town clerk part-timer is getting health insurance and other benefits from town, so there's no increase there because they're already getting those expenses from the town. The highway and cemetery hasn't had an increase in personnel in many years also. And what we need to stress here is not only the fact we have an additional new cemetery, but we get a lot of complaints about a cemetery and the condition of them. And this is an opportunity for us to kind of put them back into place and maintain them the best way we can. Recreation was a full-time position at one time. It's now part-time. Again, it's an attempt to try to bring everything back to where it was from a few years ago to many years ago. So these aren't fluffy numbers. These are true numbers based on reductions that have been made over a vast period of time, and we haven't actually made any attempt to increase these levels only because we couldn't afford it. And this is a great opportunity for us to take a look at how we can do that. So Chartley Fire Station, in my opinion, is probably the most important issue we have to address. I live on the east side of town. I live right around the corner. I have a problem with how long it takes an ambulance to get to my house. If I live in Chartley, I might have a problem with that. So, and I've heard a lot of complaints about that over the years, that they would like to have that facility opened up again. And that's going to cost them money to do so. So as we look through this process, we just have to keep in mind all these other issues and try to put the town back on a level where we were at one time. And we've been so busy reducing that we haven't had an opportunity to look at some of these departments and how we can make them better. And by the way, the library is now accredited. It wasn't for a number of years. It is now accredited, but still not at the level where they're supposed to be, even with the 50 hours per week. So we've got some other issues out there too. So in addition to your comments, I wanted to add a few more.
Thank you. And just one more thing, I don't want to keep beating this, but the Chartley Fire Station, so certainly there's been a lot of building and a lot of activity, and there is a lot of activity now over on the eastern part of the town. So one of my concerns is, obviously, there's going to be some accidents over there, I think, and so forth. So, you know, the people on the west may suffer a time limitation just because of more traffic and whatever, more activity going on in the eastern part. So I think it's important to take a look at that as well. Any other comments from the board? So what I'd like to do before we get to Dr. Bayetta is just ask if there's any questions or comments from the municipal side, if anybody has any questions or comments on that side. Okay.
Chartley,
I'm sorry.
is the Chartley station gonna be a money pit? It's been closed for a number of years, and when you start to update it with new safety equipment, the $125,000 seems very low.
Mr. Hughes, you have more information on that.
Just in wall
Sure.
equipment.
Right.
Electrical equipment.
I know they've done certain things like, they did patch the roof. I know that they, had water damage inside, so they had to do some work inside repairing that. So the, fire chief had indicated to me, the difference with them is they do a lot of the work on their own while they're there, the men. So some of the smaller stuff they would do. So that's where the figure of the 125,000 came from.
So would the 125,000 be to get it up and going, or is that a portion of additional maintenance that needs to be done?
That
through
would
a
be,
period
no,
of
that
time?
would be get it up and.
Get it up and going, okay. Anything else?
2 minutes are up.
That was only 30 seconds. Okay, Dr. Bayetta.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The school committee voted budget is an increase of $2,074,376. Again, that's $2,074,376, for a total school budget of $28,186,662. And I'd like to go through real quickly from the discussion that we had earlier. Our level services budget is $1,063,790 of that. As you heard earlier, on the town manager's recommendation, we're $70,421 short of that level services. So keep that number in mind as we get to the total. Our number one recommendation from the school department continues to be for fourth fiscal year, the implementation of full-day kindergarten. We're one of remaining 32 districts in the state now that still don't have universal free full-day kindergarten in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. What is different about this proposal is that the school department completes what we call a school choice program. The school choice program is when we bring students from other districts and are, if you will, receive funds for those students, on average $5,000. We are going to be right around 50 students for next year, or approximately $225,000, and we're earmarking for full-day K $175,000 that would not be absorbed by a tax increase. So that means that your total full-day K program to the budget is $145,242. That is a full strategic move to show and prove, number one, that we really want to see full-day kindergarten get going, because we do think that there's a benefit, i.e. the discussions I had earlier about getting to kids sooner. And two, a reminder that our families are paying as much as $3,500 to send their child to full-day kindergarten. And there is no tax write-off for those types of funds. Then we break down into our, what we would call secondary priorities. 3 of those are full reinstatements. The first one, we would like to bring back the Director of Guidance position However, we are giving it a broader responsibility. I continue to say that when we're the size of our district, that all of us have multiple hats. So in this particular case, our Director of Guidance Counseling and Social Emotional K to 12 would be housed at the high school and responsible for all of our counseling K to 12 in terms of organizing it. And let me tell you a little bit about what's going on. I think it's really important for us to recognize that the growth in social emotional issues and behavioral problems with students in today's education world continues to grow by leaps and bounds. And what we would like to do is establish some internal programs that we believe would help to, if you will, offset long-term costs, we believe. That's number one. Number two, I don't believe we're sending enough kids to college. Sorry, I just don't. Not for the type of community that we are. I believe our numbers should be significantly higher. We should be well into the 90 percentiles of students going to 2- and 4-year or specialty colleges. Nothing against careers, because I want to do that as well, which is the second part of this job, is not only the college idea, but it's the idea of, I am not a vocational technical high school or an agricultural high school. So what are we doing with the child who really is not sure about what they want to do? And so we really want to strengthen the program K to 12. And to be quite honest, I have 4 people at the high school and 3 people at the middle school that are guidance counselors that are running around with no real direction from what this college and career programming should look like. So there's a cost to that. But that's a reinstatement because we used to have this position. The second one that's on here as a reinstatement is the library media specialist, of which in last year's recommendation we had 3 after listening, doing some listening tours as I call them. We are recommending 2 for K to 8 to be split between the 3 elementary schools and the middle school, thereby having less of a cost. The role of a library media specialist in a public school is different from a public library. This is about being in the classroom with students, teaching them about research, teaching them about the ethics of writing a paper and plagiarism, and all of those minor, that they're major issues, but minor issues, if you will. But it's also about the love of reading. It's about getting students to really understand the idea. It's not about the students are going to have another special, like they have art or music in those. It's about opening our libraries and connecting them to the classroom and vice versa. The third part that's a reinstatement here is the administrative assistants. We have 5 head administrative assistants in our buildings and 1 in special education that we would like to bring back from 10-month positions to 12-month positions at a cost of $30,000. And basically that's about opening our schools, making sure that they're open in the summer. That's number 1. And by open in the summer, I mean that we can actually have families visit our schools that are moving into town, registering them. We do all of that 2 weeks prior to the start of school. It's chaotic. It doesn't work. It's not a welcoming situation. I can assure you that when I became superintendent here, I said there was 2 things I was taken aback by. The first was the lack of technology. The second one is I couldn't believe my schools were closed in the summertime. And so this money, 3 fiscal years ago, was $20,000. It's now 30, and it's just going to continue to grow, and it's time for us to, I believe, settle it. And there is work to be done in the summertime. The other positions that are on here under the priorities are to move the current half-time adjustment counselor to full-time, hence the .5 added to her time at the LGN. The digital learning specialist, currently we have 1 specialist. Our director of instructional technology does it all. In this day and age of state testing requirement, by 2019, all students will take their test online, means we need to do more with our students. This is going to be a little bit of a we have the digital learning specialist, and I also have some librarians here in this budget, so we see this as a little combination fix. Again, we're not just asking for all the positions, we're asking for some of the positions as a way to get ourselves into the game, if you will. The computer science teacher at the high school is literally that. We do not have a computer science teacher at Norton High School in 2017. It's unheard of. And we have students who want to study in the field of computer science. 33% of our students are going on to the field of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And by the way, WPI, BC, you name it, that's where we're going. So we can only imagine if we really had a few more folks that could actually help with the education of some of the courses that we think would be beneficial to those students. And then the last one, and really the curveball of all of them, is the Direct Services Coordinator of Literacy K-5 at the elementary level. We're stagnant in our scores, and I didn't become superintendent of Norton Public Schools to be stagnant. I need to figure out exactly what our issues are, and we believe we know what they are. We need further help in the classroom with supporting our teachers in the art of teaching literacy. That doesn't mean we have bad teachers. I want to be very clear. We have excellent teachers. But we do have a broadening, if you will, diverse group of learners in our system, much more diverse than they have been in the past in terms of their abilities. So this position is an opportunity to coach teachers, to support teachers in the classroom. This is not somebody who's sitting in my office. This is somebody that's embedded within the classroom. Same thing with the Director of Guidance position. And then lastly, as part of the tour, listening tour, we listened a lot after last year's vote about fees from all corners. I had folks who voted against the override who came to me and said, how do we get these parents to not have all these fees? So before you is a proposal that the school committee has approved. Number one, we would eliminate all transportation fees for all children. Now, there would be an application process because there's a mandated state law, K-6, of transporting students, and then there's a pay to ride as we have now. So we would still potentially have a student who didn't get a bus per se, although I doubt it. So what this does is we're going to probably need 2 more buses. Now, one of the things that happens all the time with bus transportation is somebody somewhere on the side of town is going to see 2 kids on a yellow bus and say, how can we have a yellow bus with 2 kids? I only need 1 to have a yellow bus, never mind 2. And we have routes, and we have families right now that are not taking the bus because of the $350 fee, no family cap. So you have 2 children, you're paying $700 out of pocket to put them on the bus, never mind the sports on top of that. The second part of that is we are currently a pay-to-play athletic program, of which this past fall, the Norton Town Meeting, through the recommendation of the school committee and support of the Finance Committee and Board of Selectmen, allowed for us to get $150,000 in the fall to offset the athletic budget. Meaning a football player doesn't have to pay $800 to play football at Norton High School. Lancer Pride doesn't have to be paying $600 to be on a team, $400 to be on a team, or whatever the number is. It basically means whatever the cost of the sport is, you divide it by the total number of students playing that sport, and that's the cost. That's different from a fee, which is offset by the operational budget. This recommendation is to go back to what I would call a reasonable fee of $125 per sport, per season, per student with no cap, and to be increased yearly based upon the increase to the athletic budget. So that we don't have any more $100 and $200 surprises, and we don't have any more pay-to-play surprises. Everybody knows that if the athletic budget goes up 4%, this fee's going up 4%. That's exactly how I've recommended it to the school committee. And so that's another $394,000 of not collecting, of still collecting some fees in terms of athletics, but then taking away the transportation. It's about 1.5%, which brings our budget total. So our override number, not including Mr. Unit's number of the health care for the 4 folks, really comes in at about $1,081,007 as an override, added to the $993 approved, if recommended and approved, which gets us to the $2,074,376 actual school department budget.
Joe, the $1,081,007, do we have to add the $70,421?
That is part of the, that's
included.
that's including the $70,000 that we carried over from the $993 that was left behind.
Okay.
Okay? The other part of it, to just continue to really try to send a clear message of class sizes, we're still going to see in this budget some class sizes right now at the LGN at 24, 25, and 26 that we don't like. So we didn't take care of that. We actually cut 2 teaching positions from one of our elementary schools because of the projected enrollment for next year. So we're going to have to play with those numbers within the classrooms, if you will. The other part that I think is really important is since 2006, we're down 29 classroom teachers, And where we've had increases, it's actually in special education. So when you offset that, you're still down 29, which is interesting. So when you look at our budget proposal, you'll see that I've cut 2 classroom teachers. I'm not saying that the retirees are going to be saved. I'm actually saying I'm backfilling them. That's why the savings is only 60,000. So it's minus 2 teachers. But then I've got the Project Early 1 teacher and the coordinator. And then down below, I've got the full day K, which is actually going from fees into the operating budget. And that includes part-time paraprofessionals in full day kindergarten as part of the 320,000, which will cost no money to the town in healthcare. Which was, Mike and I have had some discussions about how we're trying to really keep that. And we've also had the full day K program with the half-time paras. It's been really effective. It works much better than not having anyone, which is what our folks have right now with 22 to 24 students.
Okay. Mr. Bramwell?
Dr. Bayetta,
Yes, sir.
you've touched on administration positions that you
Yes.
want to bring back in. I've had people talk to me who, like me, can remember back years ago when we had a superintendent and that was it.
Sure.
And we're very fortunate to have somebody so versatile, and probably at the time, things were totally different.
Right.
And I'm sure the roles of superintendents have changed, but could you explain to people, explain to me,
Sure.
what, like, administration,
Right.
what positions are needed, and maybe just a
Sure.
job description of.
So when you look at our role and our administrators, and if you take a look at the role of the superintendent is a perfect example. It's probably the one that gets the most heat, because, we're always underworked and overpaid. The fact is, that was a joke. You can laugh.
Nobody was laughing.
Nobody was laughing. I might as well leave now.
I think we agreed with that.
Exactly, yeah, well, so if you say it, I guess they shall come, right? You've always had a superintendent. Right now, I've asked other superintendents about the role of the business manager, how people do it. There's no one that really doesn't have a business manager anymore. You go out to the Berkshires, you'll see a few districts, but in this area, everybody has a business manager. You got a $30 million business. You need checks and balances. It's that simple. It's a checks and balances process. And yeah, that's going to cost you 6 figures. You're not going to do it for $50,000. It's educated. It's a licensed position. It's a full year-round position. It has requirements of auditing. And just next week, we get special education audit coming in on top of the regular audit we already went through. I mean, those are all things we have to set up for. So and Pat Ansay, my former colleague, who I knew really well, was the business manager at one time and actually brought back the business manager. There's a little bit of an idea that I brought back the business manager. The business manager was here 4 years before I got here. And that was part of the whole dynamic of how complicated the job of the superintendency and the business manager has become. In our area, there is no one who does both roles. When it gets to the position of, for example, we had a position of 2 directors of curriculum that were shifted to a director of curriculum, and all I did is I shifted the title to assistant superintendent. Why did I do that? I did that because I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow, and this district, I firmly believe, and the school committee should have for me, a second in command who should be able to take over the roles, even if it's just for a limited time. And the cost of the taxpayers of the town was a grant. It didn't come from the operational budget. It came from a grant for any of the extra funding. And that person, who's Jennifer O'Neill, is the assistant superintendent of the district. But remember, 2 positions to 1, change of title. It's not a new position. So that's another one. The other one is the director of facilities, which used to be the supervisor of facilities. That is now a director of facilities with 46% of his salary paid by the revolving account. And that's Wade Lazat, which many of you know in the audience and is highly respected for the job that he does. And he's fantastic and actually has a wonderful relationship with the folks on the town side, especially for snow removal and all the other stuff that happens in our buildings. So that's not a new position. The Director of Instructional Technology was the position that I brought back. I reinstated back, that was let go in 2000 and I believe 10, 11. And we brought that position back because of the changing demographics of the changing education. It's kind of like when I go to my doctor and he says I have an issue and I have to go see a specialist. A director of instructional technology, exactly that. There are very few folks in central office who can run an entire technology area. And in our particular case, I want to be really, really, really definitive. The title is Director of Instructional Technology. This is a person who's in the classrooms on a regular basis, working with our staff, supporting our staff, That's not the network administrator, which we've always had, or a technician, which, by the way, we cut one last year, and we're down to only one for all of the buildings. They kind of try to share it a little bit. So that's the one position that I brought back. We don't have a transportation person. That's done by the business manager in their general role. And then in special education, it's done with the director of special education, director of pupil personnel services. Gene Sullivan, who does that role, has had some consultants who have worked in the role. I will tell you, I believe we have a savings in special education because the guy that we hired and we made assistant sped director, which used to be done by a $54,000 consultant, which is now a $65,700, I think it is, position, is one of the reasons why, through her work, working with him, he's now at meetings and saying, well, if the child is supposed to have this, 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 and this, and the child hasn't had speech since July, why am I getting billed since July for speech? That happened in this district recently. Or a student who's not motivated to go to their outside placement because they don't like it. And he's worked along with Jean and the team to put him at BCC, and she's now a college student and loves it and is doing well and is gone and graduated and so on and so forth. And we're no longer just cutting a bill to go here. We have a student who's motivated and educated out. At the end of the day, my old man always says, in order to save money, you got to spend money, but we're doing it wisely. We haven't increased the number of administrators. The one administrative-like position that we've added to the district is the dean of students at the Yale School, which is actually a teacher who we've made into a dean, who works 182 days, same salary as if they were on the teacher's scale, for the purposes of some of the disciplinary issues and behavioral issues that I started to see in 2013 and 14 in grades 4 and 5. And I can assure you that it's working. We're seeing the benefits of it. We don't have as many of the cherubs being suspended from school and getting into trouble, and I think the dean of students, who has a great reputation, does a great job with it. If that's considered, too many administrators, I can assure you there's a community nearby where, in an open meeting we had, there was a discussion about another community in a magazine only spends $1,000 more than we do. They spend $5.5 million more than we do for 112 more students. That's that same community that was reported. That's an audited DESE number, not just magazine. That's, you go to a website where the actual audited numbers have taken place, where the taxpayer can say, we're doing pretty good. Lastly, and I think it's really important, when you look at per pupil costs, the thing I keep an eye on all the time, probably the one you might have kept an eye on when you were on the school committee as well, is what's been the increase to per pupil expenditure because of administration. In the last 10 fiscal years, it's 1.5% to per pupil. I don't know about you, but that's a pretty effective number. So we're not trying to just hire administrators. We're in general, for our size district, believe it or not, in comparison to a couple of nearby districts that I think we as a community strive to compete with, if you will, we're about anywhere from the low end of 4 to the high end of 7 less administrators. Most of them coordinator positions within buildings that really are connected to curriculum, instruction, and technology. And we're not asking for any of that. We're not asking now, and I don't see us asking in the future. We really have taken a budget proposal from last year that was $3.1 million, and we've cut it by $1.1 million. And we've done so because we've listened, we've heard people loud and clear, including folks who voted no and came to see me and said, we need to change this. Folks who were very adamant that it needed to be a town discussion. And we really have tried to do that. We've done some things to show that we're listening, and we think we'd be more effective. How's that? But in terms of administration, it's a lot of it is changing of titles in one-for-one. There have been some monies in there. I'm not going to say that there haven't been, but that's also because there's added responsibilities, i.e. evaluating folks directly. I mean, our folks, one of the big things for me is accountability. It's, we can go into a personnel file now and you're going to see evaluations. You're not going to just see that, we're saying it, we're actually doing it. And I'm proud of that. And most importantly, in answering your question, long-winded, is that as we look at what we need, we've actually have given up some of the administrative positions to the teachers. For example, the dean of students position in many districts is an administrative position. We have it in this case. It's part of the Unit A, and I was fine with that. I didn't need it to be a 200-day position. The school year, the school day is fine. The idea of the position is school, culture, climate, and discipline. It's not all the other paperwork that goes with a typical administrator.
Just as a follow-up, how many of, I know at one time we were taking all the assistant principals out of, especially the elementary schools. Are there any assistant principals or?
No, the only recommendation is the 2-for-1 in this budget recommendation of the Project Early, which used to be a preschool person, early childhood coordinator, and we had an assistant principal in the building. Those are combined into one, and that's just because of the move and the uptick in numbers.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Thank you. So I didn't consider that long-winded, by the way, so that was very good. No, that was very good information.
But then it's coming from Tim.
That's a good point, too. Okay, any other questions from the board? Okay, given that, any questions or comments at all from anybody in the audience? Okay,
I'll say one
I'm
thing.
sorry. If you could, I hate to ask you.
Sure, yeah.
Yes, yes. Good evening. You just let us know the name.
Who I am.
Yeah, who you are.
Kathleen Stern, I'm currently on the school committee. I've also been a substitute teacher up until I got onto school committee for 13 years here in Norton. And anybody who doesn't understand the importance of full-day kindergarten, I strongly suggest that you make an appointment with a principal and just see if you can go look at it. Because 13 years ago, it was all about recess and choice time and do I get to play in house today, and it was about the social development of the kids and maybe a paper here and there. Now, there's a science book, there's a reading book, there's a math book. You're lucky if you get choice time in the classroom. If you get more than 5 minutes of recess on a half a day, you're lucky. It's completely changed. And those kids are they definitely are learning. By the time they leave kindergarten now, they have to know 35 sight words. That was unheard of 13 years ago. So I think just to say that the full day kindergarten is something that we definitely need because our kids are getting more education and they're better off starting off first grade when they have that as opposed to the half day. And some people just can't afford the full day. That's all.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, one of the things that I really appreciate about the community is that you're able to really look at some of the issues that you're trying to address. And I have to say that, as the superintendent only, since I am not a taxpayer in your community, that to support Mr. Kimball's comment and the rest of you that have spoken about the fire station, the substation, that's incredibly important and to the school department, because of the JCS and the middle school on that side of town. That's number one. Number two, the work that we've done so far with the police department and the opportunities that we have, and we plan, I think, in the future, probably at the end of the fiscal year, to come before you to discuss the SRO position so that you folks are updated on what's been happening with that. Because the amount of work that is happening in our school, and specifically our high school, but also K-12, is another area where the chief's recommendation, and he did discuss it with me, about the potential of support with another school resource officer, at least part-time or partial. It's significantly needed because of the issues that we're seeing. And our relationship with all the other departments at Town Hall have been only but positive. So for us to see the dynamics of being able to come to Town Hall and there's actually someone here at the office, and they're not part-time anymore, they're actual full-time, that makes a big difference, especially when we have timelines and everything else that we have to meet on our side as well. And lastly, on a personal note, today, my daughter spent the day in Norton. So you might say, why? Right? You might say, why did he bring his kid to Norton today? Because as a parent, I'm thinking of sending my kid to your school district. That's why. So if you don't think that I care about this district and wanting to move us forward, then you don't really know me, that number one. But as a parent and as your superintendent, I think there's a lot of really good things going here. What we need is that lift to take this to, not necessarily, as somebody said to me once, I don't necessarily want us to be the A, and I say, well, I can only plan for an A. I never plan for a C. I don't plan for a B. I plan for an A. And that's what we should be planning for. So you have a fantastic community, a great school system that I believe can be better with the right services, especially in the areas where we have students that are in need of support, or in an area where, because of things like state testing, and you're going to have students having to be online all the time to take their test, and we need to educate them. You know, one of the things that came out of the last year's practice tests that a lot of people, and I know there's someone in the audience who knows where I'm going with this, was that in the districts where the kids took the test online, they didn't do as well as with the paper pencil. Why do you think that happened? Because the kids are not practicing, which is the role of education, to get them to actually do it before they actually see it on the day of the test. And any of us who's ever taken a test online, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's different. It might not be as easy. You might not remember to scroll down and see that there's a D and an E choice, and you just think it's an A, B, C, things like that that are quirky, that we have to teach the children, because the last thing you want to do is get answers wrong to a test because you didn't know the format of the testing. Little quirky things like that that you might not think of as a taxpayer that really do become important to the education of kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kimball.
Regarding the SRO, school resource officer, we haven't increased our population on our police department. We're still using we still have the same amount of officers we had in 91, but this was one change in position that was very, very important. And it went away for a couple of years, I believe, and we had to bring it back. It's the intervention or the commingling or participation of the officer with the students on a daily basis, building that bond, that kind of support. And, we're very successful in this town as far as we're very proud of our police department and what they do. And I think a big portion of that is a SRO position, because it's very, very important to us that the kids feel like if they have something to say, or if they have a problem, they know to go to. And I happen to know a couple of the resource officers we've used in the past, and they're very, very good at that. And again, that's one position that it would be a shame if we had to cut back on that again, and we have done it in the past. So just another example of the cooperation between the school and the town.
Thank you, Mr. Kimball. Mrs. Sabas.
Mr. Gibbon, just for clarification's sake, it appears that Kathleen just told me the handout that we're giving out is actually one iteration behind where we are right now on this. The numbers are slightly old. Specifically, it looks like the town FY18 level services is still at 329, and therefore the deficit and also the school deficit are actually slightly off of this number. So for those of you in the audience, these numbers are not exactly accurate right now.
That says 329?
This is what's been handed out, so it's slightly old.
Should have been the 200.
Right.
Should have been this one. It says 200,000.
Okay.
I believe.
Yep.
Should be, Dinesh, correct me if I'm wrong, it's the one with 200,000, that should be the,
200 is the
Is
one
the
with
correct
down
one.
200 is that's the correct one.
Yeah.
okay.
So we can make copies of this before anybody leaves, I guess.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, because I got that one too.
It's just slightly old.
Yeah, I got one for you here.
30? Please?
The hand in the back,
What's that?
the hand in the back.
Hand in the
Yes,
back.
okay. Mr. Gouveia, if you could come up, please?
Well, if I'd known it was him, though.
I'm just not tall enough to see the hand, sorry.
That's okay, I'm hiding back there. My name is Bill Gouveia, I live at 111 Maple Street. I'm your town moderator, but I'm speaking as a citizen. And I live in Chartley. I'm 3 houses from the Attleboro line. I'm about as affected, and Bob and I were on the Board of Selectmen when we had to close the Chartley Fire Station, and I had to vote to do that. And it was difficult. And by the way, retired Chief Burgess is now declared, because I've lived in Chartley for 27 years now, that I'm now a Chartley guy. So that is, these are all worthy goals. But the reason I get up, and I know I'm going to be very short, but Joe, I was listening to you talk, and it suddenly struck me that what I think we've lacked in Norton for a long time is inspiration. And it is so important. I heard you say things like, I didn't become superintendent in Norton for test scores to be stagnant. My God, I've waited so long to hear people talk like that and talk like that about Norton. Because we shouldn't be always trying to make do and always trying to just get by. We should be trying to get better. And we're a great town, but we need to get better. We've had superintendents and other leaders who have been capable and good administrators and all that. But what we need is we need people to inspire us. Because all you folks, as leaders, if you don't inspire the citizens, then they will not be inspired. I don't care if you inspire them to vote yes, inspire them to vote no, inspire them to sit down, stand up, whatever you do. But if we don't inspire them, then we can't expect them to act in an inspired manner. And a lot of this stuff is so beyond the average citizen. Not that they're stupid, but you try to sit down and dissect a $40 million budget. You know, I spent 15 years on this town's finance committee, and I know how tough that is to do. And then to say, oh, well, I'll tell you what, after you study for a while, come on into the gym on a Monday night, and we'll all vote on it, and it'll all be great. That's a lot of work. That's really tough. And unless you inspire people, unless you give them a reason to at least consider what you're talking about, then they're not going to do it. I get the feeling, I've lived in this town for almost 60 years, which is amazing because I'm only 39. And we, way too often, we just accept that we can't do things. I'm so tired of being told what we can't do. There are things we can do. We can't do everything, and we have to worry about the expenses, and we have to worry about people, and we have to worry about seniors, we have to worry about kids, we have to worry about everybody. But I'm so tired of hearing what we can't do. Let's concentrate on what we can do and how we can do it, and let's do it together. And if we can do that, if we can get, if we can get inspired leadership from everybody, and there are a lot of people in here who are inspired leaders, if we can do that and we can make that clean and we can make that plain, then we'll get to the people we need to get to, and whether they decide yes, whether they decide no, or whatever they decide, at least they'll decide it for the right reasons and they'll have heard the right things. But as someone who cares about this town and who will die someday in this town, not nearly soon enough for a lot of people, but it will be, we can be better. And we look for your inspired leadership to help us try to be better. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Shauna Powers. I live at 7 Brahman Drive. And I don't know that I can follow Mr. Gavea, but I'll try. So I think that part of inspiring our community is continuing to inspire our young people. And I think that when you look at the priority request on Dr. Bayetta's budget, you can see that that's what he's trying to do. That's what the district is trying to do with these positions that are proposed to be added. We need to make sure that we are not just getting by with our kids and making sure they know their math facts and all the things that we did when we were little kids. But we need to make sure that they're prepared for their futures. We're not preparing them for our current lives or for our past. We're preparing them for their futures. And in order to do that, we need our kids to be able to have opportunities to take classes like computer science. We need to have people who are specialists in helping teachers integrate technology into their classrooms. We need to have licensed media specialists running our media centers, helping our kids to tell the difference between real news and fake news and how to find reliable sources. And someone who really is in the role of inspiring them to read and talk about the books they're reading and just love learning. And so I see these priority requests as a major step in the right direction toward continuing to inspire our kids to strive for the very best for their futures. Thank you.
Okay. Any? Yes.
Peter Wiggins, 157 Mansfield Ave, 1243. And I agree what Shauna says. It's time that people, including yours truly, to inspire those kids to learn what is right and what is wrong. And also, the people need to be taught that facts and not fear. And people need to be focused on our kids' future and our kids' lives. And I was saying that let's make our community move on forward.
So we'll move on. So this is, Mr. Hughes, you want to go over, do we need to go over this at all?
Well,
Before
Yeah,
we make this?
want me to just,
Yeah, if you could.
so the bottom line on those items that I referred to and the superintendent talked about would add up to a total of $2,168,774. And the breakdown would be $1,081,007 for the Norton Public Schools. And on the general government, $1,087,767. And just to note, that amount also, that includes the $69,372 that would be required to pay health insurance costs for new hires in the school system.
We have those numbers again?
Yep. What, do you need all of them, Bob?
Yeah.
2168774 is the total.
So that's again different from the sheet that's on
Yeah.
the
Yes.
handout?
Yeah.
I
And
have with the healthcare at 2,239,000.
And the schools, 1,081,007. And general government, 1,087,767.
So is that?
That's because,
That's what, 10,000 less?
what number do you need?
The town deficit.
$1,087,767.
Schools?
Schools, $1,081,007.
Total?
2,168,774.
So the sheet has the 2,239,195. If you remove the health number above the 69,000, Michael, it's still off about $700 from the town side.
The difference between what you have on that sheet and what I'm referring to, Joe has told me that the school number for the override is $1,081,007. That $200,953 included the FY18 level services needed for the town and that $70,000
Okay.
for the schools. Joe's already included that in his $1,081,000.
Okay. So that 2,239,000 for everybody, just for information, includes the 70,000. So if that's removed, that's where the total number comes up to the 2,168,774. Any questions on that? Yes, sir.
What percentage of an increase in taxes does this represent?
Yes, please.
A $2 million override would be 90 cents on the tax rate. And if you had a $400,000 home, it would be $360 a year.
So, one of the purposes of this whole discussion was for the board to just take a look at these numbers, take a look at or listen to any questions or concerns, and decide whether or not we wanted to put this override on as a question for the upcoming town meeting. So at this point in time, is there any questions or concerns from the board? Okay, given that, I would entertain a motion then to vote to submit the following ballot question for the purpose of considering the following question. shall the town of Norton be allowed to assess an additional $2,168,774 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purposes of funding the school and general government operating budgets for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2017 as follows: $1,081,007 for the Norton Public Schools and $1,087,767 for general government.
So moved.
I have a motion and a second. Any
Friendly amendment to that, I would like you to specify what ballot this is going on. Doesn't specify what ballot.
Okay. What ballot question?
It should be the April election. I'm not sure of the date.
Right.
Michael, when's the April election?
The 25th?
Yeah,
The last,
yeah, that,
April 25th.
you just want to stipulate that that won't be on this. This is the actual ballot question.
what?
This
okay,
is
the
exact-
ballot question?
Yeah, this is the ballot question itself.
We're voting to allow this to be on as a question.
Right. This would be the ballot question.
So the motion would be to allow this question to be on the April 25th election.
I'm fine with that, but it doesn't say anywhere about an April 25th election.
This
Right,
is-
it can't say it on here. This is the ballot question.
Okay.
But we can say in the motion.
Right.
Yeah.
Vote,
It's going to be somewhere.
vote to put this question on the next annual town election.
Okay.
Okay. That, I would ask that it be considered a friendly amendment to your request.
Understood.
May I ask a question?
Mr. Bramwell.
When's the deadline that we had to have this?
March 27th was the absolute deadline. She preferred March 20th.
No, the only reason I say that is we're just seeing the numbers for the first time tonight. I mean, personally, I thought that we'd have some time to digest, and if there were any questions that came up, we'd have that opportunity to ask before we voted on putting a ballot question together, but, I mean,
I
That's
with a deadline as far as, as far as a couple weeks, I have no problem
are
delaying.
we
it.
are we planning on meeting again next Thursday?
I'm planning on meeting every week.
Okay.
Sorry, Bob.
My personal preference would be to at least give me a week to digest the numbers that we have now from school and the town, and then vote on this. And that way, if I have any questions regarding the numbers, I can seek those answers out before I vote.
Sure, so I certainly don't mind waiting until, when, she would prefer, what day?
She preferred to have it by the 20th, so if you waited till next Thursday.
Okay.
That being said, I find myself in an extremely uncomfortable position that I can't see myself personally voting against this, only because I was one of the demonstrators years ago who marched through the town hall demanding that the selectmen allow the people to vote on it. So I can't see how I can demand it 20 years ago and deny it now. But it's just for personal preference to humor me, I'd like to have the opportunity to ask the questions, but if everyone else wants to vote, we can go ahead.
Yeah, I have no problem in delaying the vote another week. Certainly, Mr. Stefanelli had a question that I'm trying to get an answer on. I did text him, but I don't have that answer yet from the chief on the Charlie.
Oh, make me mad.
But I just don't. So anyways, but certainly I don't mind, my personal opinion,
I mean, I'll go with
from an overall standpoint is obviously, I always like to let the people decide, themselves either way, so.
Just give me this comment very quickly.
Sure.
I want to point out, while I respect the idea of pushing this back, two things. The first is that this is not a vote to pass this, it's only a vote to let people decide on it. There is a lot of time before that actually happens. And the second thing I would point out is that though the deadline does not seem like it's very close, it is not that far away. And ironically, we do have snow coming next week, in the middle of the week. It is not inconceivable that you would not be able to meet. So I would only say that I would urge you to vote on it tonight. It doesn't stop you from digesting these numbers further, but it does allow for unforeseen circumstances, so.
Understood as well. Mr. Kimball.
Question also, if we did vote on it tonight and, between now and next week, Mr. Bramwell found a major error in the system. Mr. Eunice, are we allowed to, again, amend the amount? I mean, we're taking a vote to put a certain amount of dollars onto the question about an override, but it's not in print until
Until,
27th or whatever it is.
well, she'll be sending everything to the printer on the 20th.
Okay, we still have until the 20th. So, like tonight, if you look at the numbers, believe it or not, they went down based on what we originally were asking for. They've actually gone down, not up. So, I mean, I guess you could say that there's always a possibility that could happen. You know, we could find something else that doesn't quite make sense, but to Dinesh's concern, mine also is, you never know what's going to happen from week to week. With all good intentions, we've had to have meetings, we just can't get in here to do it. I think I'd feel a bit more comfortable voting tonight in favor of this amount, as long as everyone has an opportunity to review this for a week and then come back next week and say, you know what, we can't ask for $2,168,774. It needs to be less or a bit more, whatever. As long as we have the ability to amend it or change it before the 20th, I think we're okay.
So it does, yeah, so based on what Mr. Unit said, that is the case, yeah.
I mean, I'm pretty confident that these numbers have been banked around and batted around, and we're seeing some other opportunities tonight where others are seeing mistakes that, you know, could be made. And as long as I don't feel like I'm locked into that number, when we can move it or amend it if we have to, I don't have any problem with voting for it tonight, myself.
Okay. Mr. Berman?
I rescind my objection. We
No, it's on-
can,
no.
we can always
Yeah.
rescind the vote next week.
Right.
There's nothing
Yeah.
that says that,
For reconsideration.
right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So
We'll
if
keep it-
everyone feels comfortable, like I said, I can't personally deny other people the right to vote that I petitioned in March for 20 years ago.
Oh, yeah, so we'll continue with the vote, but we'll keep it on as an agenda item for next week as well.
And it was more than 20 years ago, just for the record.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
While we're kind of sitting here, is, I think the other thing we're running into, if we have to have it to the 20th, that only gives people a month to really get through a $40 million budget that, actually, Mr. Correa brought up that point. It's tough to dissect this, and only giving the townspeople a month to do so, I don't think is a very good practice, in my opinion.
No, that's a valid point as well. Okay.
Just one other comment.
Yes.
The budget you're proposing, Michael, this that you gave us tonight?
Yeah.
This is a draft, or is this is still a draft copy?
Right, well, until Finance Committee reviews everything and town meeting votes on it, but that's my recommendation right
Okay.
now to the
So with your recommendations, can you make these available, so if someone does want to come in, look it over and digest it?
Yeah.
Do we have these available at Town Hall now, or do we have to wait?
Nope, they can get them
Okay, so tomorrow they can come in here and get a copy of it?
Yeah.
Where would they get it?
from me.
Same with the school budget.
Same as the school budget?
School budget will be available by tomorrow, no later than Monday, but I think it's tomorrow that we're,
It's on the website.
and it's on the website now, as voted by the school committee as well.
Okay. Okay, so we are,
Motion a second.
we had a motion and a second. Mr. Bramwell,
Yes.
Ms. Steele? Yes. Mr. Sells? Mr. Kimball?
Yes.
And I too vote yes, that is unanimous. Okay.
Do you want to take a recess and give people time?
Sure, I guess, yeah, that's probably a good idea. If anybody is interested in leaving at this point, I can take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah, so.
I know we're exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming and
We're
comments. and
voting
stuff.
on this permanent building.
Sorry. Yes, that'll be Kevin.
Doesn't have to be a joint meeting.
Is, we have Kevin O'Neill here, discussion on the vote, maybe to appoint him as a member of the Permanent Building Committee. Mr. O'Neill, do you want to come up?
I'm actually here because of the previous agenda item. I hope you were planning to attend.
This is the agenda for
tonight.
We knew you were going to be here, so I threw it on.
2 for 1.
Good evening, how are you?
Good. How you doing,
Good. Looking to appoint you a member of the Permanent Building Committee. I think, were you on that before?
I was not.
Okay.
No, and I have no idea how many people are on it right now or how many openings there are, but I knew there was a need, so figured with my experience with the schools.
Okay.
And is this supposed to be a joint vote? Okay.
Yes, it will, yeah.
I didn't know about that either.
That's how we do it here.
I guess, yeah.
Any questions at all for Mr. O'Neill?
I'd vote right away before he leaves.
Okay.
So I would say, the school committee actually had not known who we were voting on prior to this, and I had expressed some concerns about that. However, now that I'm seeing that it is Mr. O'Neill, I know him well, and speak very highly of him, and I actually think he'd be a great fit for this. So I now have no objections at all to voting for you.
Oh, good, thank you. Well, I do have a background in project management. I have a degree in engineering. It's not civil engineering or construction management, but it's industrial engineering. And obviously my experience on the building committee for 4 years helps. And so that's it. If you have any questions, please ask.
Okay, great.
One thing I can add to that is we wouldn't have the deficit, we wouldn't have had the high school completed unless Kevin and his crew didn't do the great job that they did.
Yeah, it's tremendous.
Thanks, Ralph.
Very tremendous.
Well,
Jeez,
Yeah.
getting compliments from both ends.
Everywhere.
All right, let's take the vote
Better
and
take
move on.
That's right.
Hurry up and take the vote.
So, yeah.
paid
So,
$1 and we got 65 cents back. I'll do that all day long. But it was a nice job.
yeah, very good
And the
job.
reward is the building that we got.
So I would entertain a motion to approve Kevin O'Neill as a member of the Permanent Building Committee. That is a one-year appointment.
Second.
The motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye. That is unanimous.
Great, thank you all.
Mr. Yunus.
And if anybody knows an attorney in town that would like to be on the Permanent Building Committee, have them give me a call. We still have a need for an attorney on the committee.
Thank you.
Great, thank you all.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Okay. Mr. Savas?
Are we done now? The school committee?
Yes, you are done.
Okay, would you object if I adjourn?
I do not object.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much, guys, for having us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike,
See ya.
Mike, do they need to be here about the easement?
Joe, do they want to hear on the easement for the housing authority?
Or is there any request? Because they haven't got it.
Okay.
So I would.
Ralph, they'll have to come to you. Okay.
Okay.
For the easement.
Yep, this might be.
We just sent a letter. I don't want it back there. Yeah. I've got it though. Someone give a mouthful of shit.
Just have her send me a letter.
Okay.
Thank you, Joe. Yes. Okay. Next, we have Andrea Downey, Executive Director for Norton Housing Authority. Good evening. Sorry for the delay.
It was very interesting, though, so thank you. So we're here this evening to discuss the common issue with our septic needing to be either redone for a wastewater treatment plant, new septic system, or one of the three options that I gave to each of you in your packets. Our engineer is here to discuss the three options that would include include the town.
Okay.
All right. And I know Bob wanted to have kind of a discussion to get the board up to speed on what's kind of going on at large, because now we have kind of an issue with the Norton Middle School. We're an issue, and we're trying to collaborate.
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan.
Right now, we have a real issue with our septic to 120 West Main. And we pump on a regular basis. It's getting to get costly. So one of our outlooks was to potentially, a few years back, to try to tie into the middle school. But after a lot of discussion with the water and sewer and the school, that kind of wasn't set up for us to hook into it.
Right.
So it really wasn't an option at this point. So next step was to look at a wastewater treatment plant. And that's what our engineers here to discuss with us about how this all works out. But in order to get a wastewater treatment plant on site, we have to first do a perk test. And it still has to meet Title V specs for groundwater discharge, which I think the water table's a little too high there, unless you want to drive by and look like the Blue Hills, you know, because it potentially could happen like that. That's not what we're looking for. So he drew up 3 different proposals of how to run the sewer out of 120 West Main down through Wheaton, and the cost of potentially for all 3 phases. And the cheapest way was to cut through the school property, to cut out through Fillmore Drive, the backside of that. That'd be the less expensive way to go. But in order to do that, we need easement from the town to allow that to happen. At this point, we have approximately $1 million to do the infrastructure. It's approximately going to cost us about $500,000 to do our end, and we had $500,000 to put towards the water and sewer to continue down West Main Street. But that's about the extent of the money that we have to disperse. So that's where we are.
Okay,
At this point, we're falling short for
Yeah.
3 options.
understood, okay. I don't know if we need, do we want to have any questions for the engineer at all, anybody, or Mr.
I have a
Kimball?
question, I have a concern, and that's, the best way for us to get sewerage in town is to run it down the main street.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the only way to help pay, defray the cost, make improvements on property along West Main Street. And, you know, it's always been the goal to make that connection, so, obviously, that's the best way to do it. I don't know that going down Taunton Avenue to Fillmore is the way to go, but probably, maybe it is, I don't know. But, we have some issues at this end of Main Street too, and we need to start addressing those also. And I'm wondering if maybe option number 4 could be to just keep going right on straight through past Wheaton College and come down to this interceptor down here at the bottom of the hill, or at the top of the hill, whichever way you're going. And allow us the opportunity to make some connections to some of our municipal buildings also.
Right.
Not sure what the cost is, but again, everybody that makes the connection along the way helps pay for the cost of the project. Fillmore is the easy way out, because that's where the pumping station is, and I get it.
Right.
You know, I have sewage running right in front of my house right now that I can't even tap into. I'm probably one of the few people in town that wants to tap into it, and I can't because it's a pressure-treated line, and I get it, and I don't understand how it works, but the gravity feed process probably will work well by getting everything down the hill. But the one thing I do agree with is no matter what we do, whatever direction we go in, we need to get sewage to that facility.
Right.
It's out of control there. You guys are spending a
Right. We've been
ridiculous amount
we've
of
been at
money.
this since 2014, I think,
Right,
and the
right.
school is
We've gotta
now an
figure out a
issue.
way to do it.
So that would be our kind of dream, the wish list, but I don't know what the school's timeline is, because we have a timeline. We really need to get the money spent, first of all, before they reallocate it to someone else that is completely failed, and figure out what we're going to do. So we need to, if we're going to do a wastewater treatment plan, he's only probably, I don't know, 4, maybe 6 months into an 18-month process, and we're running into sinks not draining and toilets not flushing frequently, more frequently than I'd like. And our responsibility for both of the board members that are here this evening is to provide sanitary services to our residents.
Mr. Eunice.
Just a question on option 1, the most expensive option, right, I believe, $2,696,000. How much of the sewer are you paying for under that? Are you paying for
I don't know.
any of the main in West Main Street for that?
So Mike Carter
from GCG. So option 1 is an option that was provided to us by the Water and Sewer Commission consultant. It's schematic, and that's a rough estimate. And so under option 1, that would be the total cost. The Housing Authority has from about $1 million, a little over $1 million budgeted for the wastewater treatment plant. And the Housing Authority and GCG met with the Water and Sewer Commissioners on, I believe, January 10th, and then again recently. That if you did the Main Street project, the Housing Authority could take that $1 million and put it towards the Main Street project. But the Housing Authority doesn't have adequate funds to do that whole, run it down Main Street.
Right, so that's my question. You're only gonna pay to take it from your property out to Main Street, and the water and sewer is gonna pay for the line in West Main, correct?
No, that's, so to get our sewage pumped up to Main Street would be about $350,000.
Yeah.
That means there'd be $650,000 to $700,000 left over that could go towards the improvements on Main Street.
Well, why wouldn't the water and sewer department put the main in West Main Street? Why would?
Well, I think they would, but we're in a situation where the Housing Authority has budgeted $1 million, or the THCD is budgeted, not given.
Yeah.
$1 million, and I'm trying to, ideally, the best solution, I think in the end, is to connect to the town sewer system, that for them, then put a wastewater treatment plant there. And if we had $3 million, we'd be just running it right up there and doing that. We don't have that. So what I did is I took that option that was provided to us by the Water and Sewers consultant and said, okay, it's going to be about $3 million to build it so that they could have sewer. Then I looked at the other two options, which were going back way. We still have to build our pump station. And then that only came up because I guess my understanding is that we tried to connect into the school's sewer system. The DEP said no, unless you upgrade it, bottom line. So we'd met with the school committee back about a year ago right now.
Yeah, we're at Joe Baeda's office.
And that didn't evolve. So then I said, I know that my understanding is they have a problem now with their wastewater treatment plant. So I said, oh, geez, we could just run a force main behind the schools, out the streets that were just mentioned, and actually, the schools could actually go down that same force main and tie it, it'd all be one route. Then the schools and the Housing Authority, using options 2 or 3, would then be able to connect into the town sewer system. And this is all subject to the Water and Sewer Commissioners.
Right.
Have seen this. They've
Right.
only received a copy of this today, too.
So to my point, if we're gonna go to the cost of doing this, what would you say, have $1 million?
Yeah,
Now, you're a state-funded agency, right?
yes.
And you're getting $1 million from where? Who's giving it to you?
Department of Housing and Community
That's all they're
Development.
gonna give you, is $1 million?
They're gonna give us they're trying to work on a wastewater treatment plant. That's where we left off with DHCD, and in the past probably 3 months, this new kind of scenario has surfaced, and we're trying to figure out the most cost-effective way to get away from the wastewater treatment plant if it's possible, because as you can, the schools just failed in 15 years. We don't really want to be in the wastewater treatment plant if there's going to be a sewerage in 5 years that comes down our street. That would be ideal. So I don't want to miss that opportunity.
Right, and I'm totally opposed to putting any kind of waste treatment facility on your property. I think we have to bite the bullet and run down Main Street and make it all happen.
That would be
And
beautiful.
here's how it happens. You have $1 million. It's gonna cost $2.6 million. You've got dentist office, Dunkin' Donuts, you've got Honeydew Donut, you've got a bank, you've got senior housing, you've got retail, you've got all kinds of stuff along the way. I guess how you look at it is, they're gonna pay for it too.
Right.
So
That's
you
the
take your $1
idea.
million, and that's the golden carrot, then we add to it to make it work. And we have been talking for years about improving Main Street and putting sewerage in. I'm not suggesting you have to go down here to the hump.
Right.
That may not work. Maybe at some point you do take a right on Howard and a left on Fillmore and go out that way. I don't know. But think of all the businesses and all the houses along the way that we can make those connections to, that, let's say it does cost $3 million. They can help some of the cash too to make it happen. They can help us pay for this whole project.
Right.
And do it right the first time. Just do it
The first one
right.
does. Option 1 makes the most sense, but we can't fund that. I don't think DHCD, in fact, I'm pretty sure DHCD isn't going to fund that kind of a
I
expense.
think we need to talk to Water and Sewer about engineering and doing a betterment on this thing here. And, you know, let's not worry about 50,000 from John and 20 from you. Let's do it right. You know, like we did it back in the late days, even though it was wrong, it was still right. Let's just move forward and, you know, everybody's gonna pay for it along the way. And this is how we need to get this thing going.
It'll always be there at that point.
Exactly.
And you'll be continually getting revenue from
Right.
fees.
Why were we turned down as a member of the board? That's why I'm speaking up.
Yeah.
Why were we turned down in the beginning, Bob?
What do you mean?
From the water department not tying in? Was it the
no.
school that caused?
No.
May have caused?
No, we weren't turned down though. It's just that when we tried to go to the middle school, at the time, Ralph, we weren't allowed to use that because it was designed specifically for the middle school. Nobody else could tie into that.
That was from the DEP, right?
Right.
And DEP.
Through the,
And the amount of flow it would need that was coming,
We're
the amount of
talking
flow
about
was
the
coming
high
out.
school Coming up that back entrance near the dentist office? And or something like that? And we were
no,
tying it?
it was,
The original, our septic system is horrible. So when you started to put your sewer line in on West Main, we wanted to secure gallonage. We were turned down. That's where I'm going with my question.
yeah.
I remember that we talked about two routes to tie into the school. We could have gone straight out our street to West Main or take a right toward the high school from our property and put it into that system and pump
Probably
it.
tie into their new pumping station.
Yeah, tie into
When
the
they
school.
remodeled the high school,
Okay.
they put a pumping station behind the Yell School.
Yeah.
The sewage goes from the high school to the pumping station at the Yell School.
Yeah.
The Yell School goes to that pumping station. Then they pump it back over towards the high school, and it goes out next to the old tennis courts to get out to West Main Street. It goes down to the middle school. And they thought that that was their answer to septic systems at Yell and the high school.
Right.
But now they're having a problem with the sewage treatment plant at the middle school.
Right.
So you probably are not being allowed to tie into that
can't.
because of
Yeah.
the problems they're having with its efficiency.
So we're back to the original request of gallonage tying into West Main. So our first request, that's where I was going with it. It went away.
Yeah, but that is flowing in the wrong direction. You want
It's
to
going in a
go,
different direction now.
Right.
you want to go towards the center to
Right.
get into the Mansfield, Norton, Foxborough sewage treatment plant down.
In the
On Hill
Yale, in the high school tie-in also.
We do the same thing, right?
So you're going all the way to the hump.
No,
Not
wherever,
necessarily.
wherever.
To Wheaton, that's
Yeah.
right, Wheaton,
Right.
yeah.
Probably go to Howard Street and in that way, I guess, I don't know. Or
What do you
Fillmore,
need from us
whatever.
if You go in that direction. You need some kind of a letter indicating that we've got the money and we're willing to pay it. What happens?
I don't think we've anything to do with
I
it.
think, Ralph, what we need to do is get together with water and sewer
And
You
and
guys.
us,
You guys.
everybody, and get, you know,
I mean, we can certainly meet with water and sewer, right? We have no problem, but we don't have the say in
the
that.
ball rolling.
I mean, we agree that that option number one is the best way to go.
Not
Costing us a
necessarily.
fortune.
Sure, yeah.
And so when I say priority, I mean, you would not want to have anyway, it's a problem.
Understood,
It's an
yeah.
expensive problem.
Continue
The
with it.
sooner we get it.
Right. And like I said, this has been ongoing since 2014. We have a obligation to keep things flowing at our housing authority. We have probably 150 people there and 130 units that rely on that.
Yeah,
If I may,
Mr. Bramwell.
I think you're taking liberties by saying we're in favor. This end of the table is not in favor of option one. We would rather see it go out behind the schools and over to 140 to tie into the Wheaton College.
Right.
Yes, I personally,
apologize.
well, I personally don't like the idea of, especially the way in the past betterments have been charged to people, that I don't feel comfortable in going down 123, only because I don't know what the people along that route are going to get hit with for tie-in fees.
Understood. Ms. Steele?
Mr. Chairman, yeah, just along the same lines as what Brad just said. First of all, don't get me wrong, I absolutely believe that this is a problem that has to be taken care of, and we need to do everything we can. But I guess my concern as well with our water sewage department is, you know, all the people along 123 that are going to be forced to tie in. It's a huge expense to them. So I don't want this presented as we're gonna make it work for the housing on the backs of the people on 123. But I'm not saying, I don't agree with what you guys are saying. This is definitely something we need to look at, but there's gotta be an option, that we can come up with, especially with the $1 million up front, right? I mean, like, yeah, I mean, there's gotta be a way that we can make this work. And, I think, I agree that we don't really have any say with water sewer, but, because it's so important to so many residents in the town, I would fully, endorse a meeting with them and our two boards, to put some pressure to come up with a solution. With the $1 million out there, there's gotta be a solution that isn't gonna hurt other people in town.
Understood.
And I would add to that, that what I don't want to see is spending $1 million up front and then go meander through the woods behind the schools, and then 5 years from now, have to make a connection on West Main Street and spend all the money again.
Right.
We've got $1 million that we can start as a kind of a cushion, and the rest of it, I'm completely concerned also about the abutters, but at some point, they're gonna get hit anyway, so we might as well talk about how we can make that work. Because if you think about who's along West Main Street in that area, there's a lot of commercial buildings along there that may want to pay to have that kind of opportunity to make that connection, because if I owned a donut shop, I think I'd want to have town sewage.
Right.
That's my opinion. You know, it may be worth the cost of doing it. Not to say we can't look at the other options, but I still think that we need to look at the whole thing, but I think it wouldn't be in our best interest not to consider option one,
Right.
because we're going to do it anyway. At
Right.
some point, we're going to end up doing it. It's not just a matter of time.
COA building definitely needs it.
Yeah, and I know, oh, go ahead.
If I could just speak on one thing. Option one basically runs a gravity sewer up Main Street, approximately to where the first school is. And then you have to go in the other direction, because if you drive it, you'll see all of a sudden after the schools, it starts going the other way. So the housing authority, no matter what, is gonna have to pump to a
Right.
sewer system. The schools pretty much look like they're gonna have to pump to this gravity system. So the gravity that comes all the way up to, I think it's the Yale School, is that
Yeah.
correct? Okay. Yale School. We're still gonna pump to that no matter what. The school's gonna pump to that no matter what. That gravity is really for the benefit of the people from that point down in any future. You know, the master plan is to bring the sewer the other way down towards the middle school and then pump back up. So we're gonna spend that $350,000 to pump. The school's gonna have to pump. So our alternative of just taking a force main, which would be a permanent solution, not a temporary solution, and running it, you know, down behind the schools. And we'd also, the way we kind of looked at it, we budgeted is that we'd put a force main in the same trench for the schools too. So they could just, you know, they'd have their own separate force main, and we would all pump over towards the Wheaton College area.
Right.
So that gravity line is truly, we would tie into it if it was there. It's not gonna be there. And one of the issues with the housing authority septic system, it's reaching its useful life. I don't wanna say it's failed.
Right.
And they have to do an inspection relatively soon in the DEP, because it's over 10,000 gallons a day, it falls under the DEP's jurisdictions. And there's a decision point that's coming up. We're holding off because I think this is a better solution. But there's gonna reach a point where our hand's gonna be forced, and we're gonna have to go. And it may not even, the wastewater disposal, there's no guarantee that it's gonna work.
Right.
Ms. Steele.
You know, with one of our last meetings with the water sewer commissioners, we had asked them that if they would let us know what their plans were for future growth within our system. And, you know, when Bob just said that we're gonna have to go down 123 eventually anyways, that kind of made me think, well, let's hear what they're saying. If they're saying that this is something in a year or two anyways, then Brad and my concerns might not be as valid. If it's something they're not looking for 10 years, then it would be a little bit more of a concern to me. So I think that water sewer is the key to this problem.
May I?
Mr. Salvo first.
Good, Ralph, you're older than I am, good.
As the Serpent rep, I'm hearing from attending the meetings that the money that's been allocated for the Seacoast Rail and everything else, if that's not used and buttoned up, it starts to chip away and fall by the wayside. So here we have a shoebox full of money. We were saying $1 million, it could be more, it could be a little bit less. But if we let it sit there And again, we don't wanna do something quick and pay the price for doing it incorrectly. But if we can put our engineers to work on this new way of, the way that we're talking about tonight, it puts the pressure back on, is it HUD or DHCD money? It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's the Fed money and the state money. It puts the pressure on them that we're moving in the right direction, rather than sitting back and looking at proposals. So I'm sharing that with you because I've sat in on meetings in Circuit and I've watched programs for rotaries and everything just go away because the Seacoast rail came in and scooped it because it was sitting there. I'd hate like heck to see that happen with our housing.
Well, in another 3 weeks, we're going out to bid to redo the whole grounds of the housing authority, drainage, new water mains, new parking, new pavement. We're putting in the pipes for potentially going somewhere. So while we'll have this under construction, we're not gonna wait 5 years. Hopefully we'll maybe have an idea, you know, in a month or so, which direction we are heading in. You know, then it'd be all better for the contractor that's doing the work in the future, so. It's actually going out to bid and hopefully work will start sometime.
Is that part of the million then?
Pardon me?
No,
Is that
that's
part of
a
it?
different,
No.
that's a different.
Separate, okay.
I'd like to add to that, it's because of Andrea and the cooperation of who she works with. This year, we were awarded 2.2 million. What was the number?
We have a lot of different funding opportunities right now. We have a CDBG project that's going out to bid, as Bob just mentioned, for about $671,000. And because of the CDBG project, we were able to parlay that into a HILAP project with leverage financing for $2.1 million to improve windows, roofs, et cetera.
We're doing everything on the surface to make our
Yeah.
community.
So this other piece,
2 mil.
we're actually spending money on all these reconfigurations because this project has gone up and down, up and down. You know, first it was the wastewater treatment plant at the school, and then it was our own, and now we have these other 3 options. And, you know, the money's just sifting out because we're changing gears all the time. So it'd be nice to quickly, efficiently get some sort of a conclusion on what way we're going to go so we can spend the money prudently. And as far as the betterment, I think, I'm not a Norton citizen, I live in Attleboro, but I think betterments, everyone along that road is going to have to comply with the Title V requirements. So as a property owner, I think that would be a plus for me. And betterments typically work over 20 years with a low interest rate, so they're,
Unless you live.
Generally.
You're not a Norton resident.
They never go away.
I'm pretty sharp
Maybe in
town
Attleboro.
manager here.
but I think it's good.
I'm still paying for them.
But I think the
He's
next,
figuring them out right now.
I think the next step is you need to get the water sewer commissioners to find out what they want to do. Because we can have our opinions about what we think you should do.
Yeah.
And they're going to have their own.
Well-
But you have to keep in mind, too, that that's not the only project that's going on. You know, there's a lot of talking about, oh, we're gonna rezone Mansfield Avenue, and we're gonna have that developer put sewerage in all the way down to the reservoir,
Right.
Reservoir Street. I mean, there's a lot of other projects that are kind of hanging out there, too, that you might be able to tie into. So, you know, it may be, you may go out Freeman Street and forget about Main Street. I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know what their plan is, but you probably, that's the best action right now is to find out what the water sewer commissioners are thinking and see which way they think they're going
I'm
to go.
not speaking on their behalf by any means, but I've been in 2 meetings with them, and they're very pleased with the down West Main
Okay.
plan.
Well, if you tell them I agree with that, that might not work, but, you know, just keep it between ourselves.
Okay.
It's on
Yeah.
television.
Turn the tape back.
No.
You can cut that out.
So,
Okay.
that's all we have for this evening, unless you have any other questions for us.
No, nothing fair.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, I enjoyed my evening with you.
Come back again.
Thank you, yeah.
Thank you both for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you.
See? Oh,
Good night, Andrea.
all right. So on the agenda here, we have Paul Vessel, Director of Business Development from Northeastern USA. Is Mr. Vessel here?
No, he's not here.
Okay, he's not here tonight. So maybe we can reach out to him and reschedule that, please.
He might have left an hour and a half
He
ago.
may have been here, yeah. Okay, Mr. Units, to discuss old business. Discussing.
Rather than do that tonight, I told Carol to try and keep your agenda light next week so we can concentrate on the town meeting articles and maybe get through most of them.
Okay.
In the meantime, if you have any questions or if you need me to send you anything again on the articles, let me know and I'll get them to you.
Okay.
Can you see if Mr. Vessel can come?
Yeah,
Yes.
please, yeah, let's
Yep.
see that. That's important. Very important. Again, town manager report, update on the water bodies, Mr. Units.
Yeah, just wanted to let you know that right now, Solitude and ESS are working through National Heritage, trying to see if they can get to use tablets in Winnicott instead of the liquid that they were going to use to treat Winnicott. They expect to start treatments first or second week in April on the pond, so they're getting ready to go, and hopefully everything works out well this year.
So, you know, one of the main concerns from the water body standpoint is, obviously, is getting Winnicott going as well. You know, so if we're still studying how to treat it, I guess, you know, we may lose another year is really the main concern, and, you know, we don't want to do that. So is there any possibility that could get finalized at all in the next, I mean, I guess it would be the next couple of weeks?
Right, well, they're just trying to make it easier to use the pellets. I mean, they're already permitted to do the
Yeah.
other things, so if they don't get an answer, they can move forward.
They can move forward with that, okay. So we need to make sure that they continue to move forward with at least what they're looking to do.
And I know we had warm weather and everyone probably was thinking, well, gee, it's spring, well, now we're going back to winter, so.
Yeah, it's not good, yeah. I know Mr. Savas said it was supposed to snow next week. I didn't hear that either.
It's supposed to snow tonight?
Tonight, yeah.
Next Tuesday?
Next Tuesday?
You're gonna break your record, Mike.
I know, we need to get to 75.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, anything else on the town manager?
Just, all the department heads today met with Condyne. They came in to talk about the development and the rezoning on Leonard Street, and it was very informative. They do have public hearings, the planning board, on the 21st on all three zoning articles, Winnicott Reservoir and that property on Taunton Ave.
Thank you. Okay, Selectmen's report and mail. Mr. Salvo.
I don't have anything, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Ms. Steele?
I do, Mr. Chairman, just something quick. I just want to remind everybody that tomorrow night is It Takes a Community's annual basketball game, starting at 7 o'clock over at the high school. There are still tickets available. And just as a quick reminder, that all the proceeds from this basketball game go to help families in town who have suffered a major illness or death of either one or both parents. And this year, we have 7 to 10 families on the list that are looking for some help. So it's definitely a community event, and it helps all of our neighbors. So if anybody is looking for something to do tomorrow night, 7 o'clock at the Norton High School, and hope to see you there. Oh, and actually, I should tell you, the basketball game is between the police department and the teachers.
That's important. How many years has that been going on now?
This is the 15th.
I was gonna say 15 years,
Yeah,
probably, yeah.
helped a lot of families.
Wow, that's great.
You'll be there, right, Peter? Yep.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bremmel?
All set.
Okay, Mr. Kimball? I received, got a letter in my packet here just with regards to the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance, so, which to me doesn't, you know, it's regards to specifically a vote that was taken. There were essentially 3 votes that would implement the above idea, which is that the cities and towns would get their estimates of local aid by the end of March. So the vote was taken, and it failed. It failed on all 3 votes, I guess I'll say. So I don't know, Michael, do you know anything about this, or it's just interesting how it failed, and you know we need information in order so that we can get budgets. get our budgets done. But I just find it interesting that the House and the Senate isn't allowing us to get that information. It could be numerous different reasons, but I was going to reach out to our state reps and our senator to find out maybe what that was about.
We do have the governor's proposed budget. We've already received
Yeah.
that, so we know what our local aid is there. But now, the House and Senate, they both have to vote on budgets, and then they have to sit down together. If they vote on different budgets and compromise, and then get everything to the governor, so
Yeah.
it's a process.
Yeah. Okay. Warrants and minutes, Mr. Salvo.
Forget about that, but, sorry. At this time, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to approve the bill warrant number 54 dated March 9, 2017, in the amount of $128,445.28.
Second.
I have a motion and a second on warrant number 54. Any questions? Given none, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye to vote aye, that is unanimous. We have minutes dated January 5th, 2017, and February 16th, 2017. Everybody had a chance to review those? Any questions or concerns? Given none, I would then entertain a motion to approve minutes dated January 5th, 2017, and February 16th, 2017, as written.
So moved.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
I too vote aye, that is unanimous. Next meeting's agenda, we do have on the list is the, just to review once again, the 2.5 override. Any other items that we want on the list?
Streetlight guy coming?
Yeah, we'll have the streetlight guy as well, yeah, the LED and the town warrants, right. Anything else? Okay, anything else that comes before the board? Given that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.